If you're over 60 and you eat peanuts, cashews, or pine nuts on a regular basis, I need your attention for the next 30 seconds. Not because nuts are bad, but because certain varieties contain compounds that can interfere with your blood pressure medication, spike your blood sugar without warning, and quietly damage your kidneys one handful at a time. And almost nobody is telling you which ones to watch out for. The frustrating part, you've been told your whole life that nuts are healthy, so you eat them without checking, without questioning, without realizing that your body after 60 processes these foods by a completely different set of rules. The reassuring part, once you know which nuts to keep and which ones to replace, protecting yourself is as simple as reaching for a different jar. In 30 years of practice, I've watched too many patients come to me confused, doing everything right on paper, but eating the wrong nut every single day without knowing it. Today, I'll show you 7 nuts that are either saving or silently harming your health after 60. And the number one nut to avoid, it's the one most seniors would never suspect. Here's what I'm curious about. Has a doctor ever told you which specific nuts to eat or avoid? Ever? Type yes or no below. Your answer might surprise the person scrolling past this who's never had that conversation with their doctor either. I'm Dr. Walter Pembrook. And today, I'm going to do something your doctor probably hasn't had time to do. Sit down with you and go through your nut choices one by one. No jargon, no scare tactics, just the plain truth about which nuts belong in your pantry after 60 and which ones are quietly working against you. We'll start with the 4 nuts that can genuinely protect your heart, your brain, and your bones. Then I'll reveal the 3 you need to rethink, ending with the one most seniors should stop eating altogether. Let's start with the nut that does the most good. Reason #7, the almond, your bone's best friend after 60. If there's one nut that earns a permanent spot in your kitchen after 60, it's the almond. And the reason isn't what most people think. Yes, almonds are healthy. You've heard that before. But what you probably haven't heard is exactly why they matter so much for an aging body. And it starts with a problem most seniors don't know they have. After 65, your bones are quietly losing density every single year. It's called bone resorption, your body breaking down bone faster than it can rebuild. You can't feel it, you can't see it, but one bad fall, and you feel the consequences for the rest of your life. Almonds fight this on 2 fronts. First, they deliver calcium about 97 milligrams per cup. Not a headline number, but a meaningful daily contribution towards slowing that invisible bone loss. Second, and this is the part most people miss, almonds are loaded with magnesium. And magnesium is the traffic controller that directs calcium into your bones where it belongs, instead of letting it drift into your arteries where it causes calcification and cardiovascular damage. Without enough magnesium, the calcium you consume can actually hurt you. With it, that same calcium builds the structure keeping you upright and independent. But almonds don't stop at your skeleton. They're rich in monounsaturated fats, the same heart-protective fat found in olive oil, which actively lowers your LDL cholesterol. They deliver 3.5 grams of fiber per serving, a real advantage for the nearly 40% of older adults dealing with chronic constipation. And research from Tufts University has shown that compounds in almond skin protect brain cells from oxidative stress, the kind of damage linked to age-related memory decline. One of my patients, a 72-year-old retired carpenter from Oregon, had been taking calcium supplements for years, but his bone density kept dropping. When we looked at his diet, he had almost 0 magnesium. I added a handful of almonds to his daily routine. 6 months later, his numbers stabilized for the first time in 4 years. Dr. Pembrook, you're telling me a handful of almonds did what my supplements couldn't? Not alone. But they filled the gap his supplements were missing. How to eat them. Always choose raw or dry, roasted, unsalted. Eat them with the skin on, that's where the strongest antioxidants live. If whole almonds are too hard on your teeth, sliced almonds or unsweetened almond butter deliver the same benefits. Aim for about 23 almonds per day, roughly 1 small handful. Your bones, your heart, your gut, and your brain. 1 nut. 4 benefits. That's the almond. Now, if almonds are your bone's best friend, wait until you hear what walnuts do for your brain. Reason #6, the walnut, the closest thing to brain food that exists. People like to point out that walnuts look like tiny brains. It's a cute observation, but in this case, the resemblance is backed by serious science. Walnuts are the richest nut source of a plant-based omega-3 fatty acid called ALA, alpha-linolenic acid. And ALA does something remarkable inside your head. It keeps the membranes of your brain cells flexible. Flexible membranes mean faster communication between neurons. Faster communication means sharper thinking, quicker recall, and better problem solving, exactly the cognitive functions that naturally slow down after 60. Research published in the Journal of Nutrition put this to the test. Seniors who ate roughly 1.5 ounces of walnuts daily for just 8 weeks showed measurable improvements in processing speed and mental flexibility. Not from a drug, not from a supplement, from a nut. But walnuts go deeper than speed. They contain polyphenols, powerful plant compounds with a rare ability. They can cross the blood-brain barrier. Once inside, they work to calm chronic neuroinflammation, the kind of low-grade, invisible swelling that research has linked to the progression of Alzheimer's disease and other forms of dementia. And here's something most seniors don't know. Walnuts contain natural melatonin, the same hormone your body produces to regulate sleep. After 60, melatonin production declines, which is why so many older Americans struggle with fragmented, shallow sleep. A small handful of walnuts before bed won't knock you out, but it may help your body transition into a deeper, more restorative rest. Beyond the brain, walnuts deliver arginine, an amino acid that improves the flexibility of your blood vessels. More flexible vessels mean lower blood pressure and less strain on your heart with every single beat. One of my patients, a 9-year-old, retired postal worker from Michigan, had been complaining about foggy thinking for over a year. No diagnosis, no clear cause. I suggested he add walnuts to his morning oatmeal. 8 weeks later, he told me something I'll never forget. Dr. Pembrook, I finished the Sunday crossword for the first time in 2 years. My wife thought I cheated. Walnuts are the richest nut source of ALA omega. He didn't. His brain just got the fuel it had been missing. How to eat them. Store walnuts in the refrigerator. Their high-fat content makes them go rancid quickly at room temperature. Aim for 7 to 9 halves per day. If they taste slightly bitter, that's actually a sign the antioxidants are intact. Don't let the flavor fool you. That bitterness is protecting your brain, your mind, your sleep, your heart, your blood vessels. That's the walnut. And this brings us to something that affects every older American differently, but almost no one connects it to a nut. Reason #5, the pistachio. The heart and eye protector hiding in plain sight. If I had to pick one nut that seniors overlook more than any other, it's the pistachio. Most people think of it as a party snack, something you crack open at a barbecue and forget about the next day. That's a mistake. Because for anyone over 60 managing high blood pressure, pistachios may be one of the most powerful natural tools you're not using. Here's why. One serving of pistachios delivers approximately 285 milligrams of potassium. Potassium is the mineral your kidneys use to flush excess sodium out of your body. And as you age, your body holds onto sodium more stubbornly, which is exactly why blood pressure creeps up year after year, even when you think you're eating well. Clinical studies have shown that a daily handful of pistachios can lower systolic blood pressure by 3 to 5 points. That might sound small on paper, but for a senior managing hypertension, those few points can be the difference between staying on a low dose and needing stronger medication with more side effects. In some cases, the blood pressure benefit of pistachios is comparable to a mild pharmaceutical intervention without a single prescription. But pistachios have a second gift most people never hear about. They're one of the only nuts rich in lutein and zeaxanthin, two antioxidants that form a protective shield over your retina. Age-related macular degeneration is the leading cause of irreversible vision loss in older adults. And these two compounds are your eye's front line of defense. One of my patients, a 5-year-old widow from Arizona, had been struggling with rising blood pressure for 3 years. We'd adjusted her medication twice. I asked her to add a small handful of unsalted pistachios to her daily routine. At her next visit, her systolic reading had dropped 7 points. She stared at the number on the screen for a long time. "Doctor, Pembrook, I've been fighting this number for years. You're telling me a handful of green nuts did what 2 medication changes couldn't finish?" Not by themselves. But they finished what her medication started. And here's a practical bonus. My older patients love pistachios are softer than almonds or macadamias. If you have sensitive gums, crowns, or dental implants, they give you a satisfying crunch without the risk of cracking something expensive. If you buy them in the shell, the act of shelling naturally slows your eating, which prevents overeating, and gives you a visual reminder of how much you've consumed. How to eat them. Choose unsalted or lightly salted. Aim for about 49 pistachios, roughly 1 ounce per day. If arthritis makes shelling difficult, pre-shelled varieties work just as well. Your blood pressure, your eyes, your teeth, your portion control. That's the pistachio. Now, before we continue, I want to pause and hear from you. We've covered 3 nuts so far that deserve a permanent place in your kitchen: almonds for your bones, walnuts for your brain, and pistachios for your heart and eyes. But I'm curious, which one surprised you the most? Which one are you adding to your grocery list this week? Type it in the comments. Because what's coming next is the other side of the story, the nuts that might already be sitting in your pantry doing more harm than you realize. Here's where things get interesting, because this next nut is the most powerful one on the entire list, and you only need one per day. Reason hash 4, the Brazil nut, one single nut that controls your thyroid. If I told you there was a nut so potent that eating just one per day could support your thyroid, protect your brain, lower your cholesterol, and reduce inflammation, you'd probably think I was exaggerating. I'm not. That's the Brazil nut. And the secret is a trace mineral called selenium. Brazil nuts are the single richest dietary source of selenium on the planet. One nut, just one, contains more than your entire daily requirement. And selenium is the fuel your thyroid runs on. Think of your thyroid as the master thermostat of your body. It controls your energy levels, your metabolism, your weight, and even your mood. After 60, that thermostat starts to drift. It slows down, becomes sluggish. And when it does, you feel it everywhere: persistent fatigue that sleep doesn't fix, unexplained weight gain that diets can't touch, and a low-grade fog that settles over your thinking like a gray morning that never lifts. Selenium keeps that thermostat calibrated. It gives your thyroid the raw material it needs to produce the hormones that keep you energized, sharp, and stable. One nut. That's all it took. But here's the critical warning: more is not better. Brazil nuts are so dense in selenium that eating too many can cause selenium toxicity, a condition called selenosis. But selenium does more than feed your thyroid. It's a powerful antioxidant that actively lowers systemic inflammation, the silent, chronic kind that damages your blood vessels, your joints, and your brain cells without ever causing a fever. For older adults, this translates to protection against cognitive decline, lower LDL cholesterol, and a stronger defense against the oxidative stress that accelerates aging from the inside. One of my patients, a 70-year-old retired school bus driver from Indiana, had been battling fatigue and brain fog for over 2 years. Her thyroid levels were technically in range, but sitting right at the bottom. No medication needed, her doctor said. I suggested one Brazil nut every morning with her coffee. 3 months later, she walked into my office with a different energy entirely. Dr. Pembrook, I feel like somebody turned the lights back on. Symptoms include nausea, brittle hair, nerve problems, and in severe cases, real organ damage. This is not a handful nut. This is a one per day nut. How to eat them. One Brazil nut per day. Not 2, not 5. 1. Add it to your morning routine alongside your coffee or your oatmeal. Store them in the refrigerator to maintain freshness, your thyroid, your energy, your inflammation, your mental clarity. One nut. One per day. That's the Brazil nut. Now, this is where the conversation changes, because the next 3 nuts are the ones most seniors never question. Reason hash 3. The peanut. The healthy snack that isn't what you think. They told you peanuts are a great source of protein. Affordable, familiar, the backbone of every trail mix and snack jar in America. You've probably been eating them since you were 5 years old. But here's the first thing most people don't realize. Peanuts aren't actually nuts. They're legumes. They grow underground in soil. And that matters more than you think. Because they develop in dirt, peanuts are uniquely vulnerable to contamination by aflatoxins, toxic compounds produced by mold during growth and storage. Younger bodies can handle small amounts of these toxins without much trouble. But after 60, your liver's detoxification pathways slow down. They become less efficient, less forgiving. And when aflatoxins accumulate over years of daily peanut consumption, the strain on your liver becomes a real clinical concern. But the mold risk is only the beginning. Look at the fat profile. Peanuts are loaded with omega-6 fatty acids. In small amounts, omega-6 is essential. But our modern diets are already drowning in it, from cooking oils, processed foods, and fried everything. Adding a daily handful of peanuts on top of that is like pouring gasoline on a fire that's already burning. For a senior dealing with arthritis, chronic joint pain, or any inflammatory condition, excess omega-6 without enough omega-3 to balance it doesn't just fail to help, it actively makes the inflammation worse. And then there's the way most Americans actually eat peanuts. Roasted in inflammatory seed oils, coated in salt, turned into peanut butter, packed with hydrogenated fats and refined sugar. The nut itself is questionable, but the way it's processed turns it into a metabolic hazard for anyone managing blood pressure, blood sugar, or weight. One of my patients, a 4-year-old retired mechanic from Texas, ate peanut butter on toast every single morning for over 30 years. His inflammation markers had been climbing for years. His joints ached constantly. When we eliminated peanuts and replaced them with almond butter, his CRP levels dropped noticeably within 2 months. He shook his head and said, "Dr. Pembrook, peanut butter was the one thing I never thought could hurt me." That's exactly what makes it dangerous. The things you never question are the ones that slip past your defenses the longest. What to do instead? If you love the ritual of nut butter on toast, switch to unsweetened almond butter or walnut butter. If you enjoy snacking on peanuts by the handful, reach for pistachios or almonds instead. An occasional peanut won't destroy your health, but making it your daily habit is a missed opportunity to feed your body something that actually fights inflammation instead of fueling it. The peanut isn't your enemy, but it's not the ally you think it is. Now, the next one is harder to talk about because this nut has a reputation that makes people trust it without question. Reason #2, the cashew, the smooth saboteur your kidneys can't afford. They told you cashews are a premium health food. Smooth, buttery, elegant, the kind of nut that shows up in expensive trail mixes and recipe blogs with the word superfood in the title. And they taste so good that most people never stop to ask what they're actually doing inside an aging body. Here's what your body sees when you eat a handful of cashews' carbohydrates. More than almost any other nut, cashews have a surprisingly high starch content, which gives them a significantly higher glycemic index than almonds, walnuts, or pistachios. When your goal is steady, even energy throughout the day, cashews behave more like a refined carbohydrate than a health food. And your pancreas, already working harder than it used to, doesn't need the extra burden. For the nearly 25% of older Americans living with diabetes or prediabetes, this means cashews can spike your blood sugar in ways you never expected from something sitting in the healthy snacks aisle. But the blood sugar problem is only half the story. Cashews are concentrated sources of oxalates, naturally occurring compounds that bind with calcium in your bloodstream and urinary tract. When that happens, they form crystals, and those crystals become kidney stones. After 60, your kidneys filter less efficiently than they once did. They can no longer process high levels of oxalates the way they could at 40. So for a senior already concerned about kidney function or bone density, eating cashews daily creates a quiet bottleneck. The very calcium you're trying to consume for your bones gets hijacked before it ever arrives. One of my patients, a 7-year-old widow from Florida, had been eating a small bowl of cashews every evening while watching television. She thought it was the healthiest snack she could choose. When she came to me with her second kidney stone in 18 months, we traced her oxalate intake back to one primary source. She sat in my office, stunned. "Dr. Pembrook, I picked cashews because I thought they were the safest thing I could eat." The safest looking choice was the one quietly building stones inside her kidneys. And we haven't even mentioned how cashews are typically sold roasted in inflammatory seed oils, coated in enough sodium to spike your blood pressure before the bag is half empty. The nut itself is problematic. The processing makes it worse. What to do instead? If you love that smooth, creamy texture, reach for a small serving of walnuts or macadamias in moderation. They deliver the richness without the oxalate load, the blood sugar spike, or the hidden sodium. An occasional cashew in a stir-fry won't hurt you, but making them your nightly ritual is a gamble your kidneys shouldn't have to take. The cashew isn't evil, but for a body over 60, it's asking too much of the wrong organs at the wrong time. And now we come to the most important reason of all, the one I promised you at the very beginning. The nut that most seniors would never suspect. The one I advise my patients to approach with extreme caution or avoid altogether. Reason Hasson, the pine nut. The gourmet danger hiding in your salad. Pine nuts. Those tiny, elegant seeds you sprinkle on a Mediterranean salad or blend into a fresh pesto. They look harmless. They taste delicious. They come wrapped in the reputation of one of the healthiest diets on earth. And for a senior over 60, they may be the most dangerous nut in your kitchen. Here's why, and I need you to listen carefully, especially if you take daily medications for blood pressure, cholesterol, arthritis, or type 2 diabetes. Research has shown that certain fatty acid compounds in pine nuts can interfere with the way your liver metabolizes medications. Your liver uses a specific enzyme system to process the drugs you take every day. When pine nuts disrupt that system, your medications don't break down the way they're supposed to. They may become less effective, meaning your blood pressure isn't controlled as tightly as you think, your cholesterol isn't being managed as well as your doctor believes, and your diabetes medication isn't doing its full job. Or, worse, the disruption can cause medications to accumulate in your bloodstream at higher than intended levels, triggering side effects that seem to come out of nowhere. Dizziness, nausea, muscle pain, fatigue. You report these symptoms to your doctor adjusts the dose. But the real problem was never the medication. It was the handful of pine nuts you ate with dinner 3 nights a week. This alone would be enough to rank pine nuts at the top of this list. But there's more. There's a well-documented condition called pine mouth or dysgeusia. Shortly after eating certain varieties of pine nuts, some people develop a persistent, bitter, metallic taste that can last for days, sometimes up to 2 weeks. For a younger person, it's an annoyance. For a senior, it can be devastating. A distorted sense of taste leads directly to loss of appetite. And in the geriatric population, even a few days of poor eating triggers a cascade, unintentional weight loss, muscle wasting, a weakened immune system. Suddenly, you're more vulnerable to infections, more likely to fall, more likely to end up in a hospital bed over something that started with a salad topping. And we haven't discussed oxidation. Pine nuts are exceptionally high in polyunsaturated fats, the most unstable kind. They go rancid fast when exposed to light or room temperature. And once those fats oxidize, they flip. They stop being anti-inflammatory and start triggering the very systemic inflammation they were supposed to fight. For a senior with arthritis, joint stiffness, or any chronic inflammatory condition, rancid pine nuts are adding fuel to a fire you're already trying to put out. One of my patients, a 7-1-year-old retired English professor from Connecticut, was meticulous about her health. Mediterranean diet, daily walks, every medication taken on time, but her blood pressure had become erratic over several months. Her cholesterol wasn't responding to her statin the way it used to. Her doctor was considering increasing her dose. When we reviewed her diet in detail, one thing stood out: she'd been adding pine nuts to her salad almost every evening for over a year. We removed them. Within 6 weeks, her numbers stabilized. Her statin started working again. No dose change needed. She looked at me and said, "Dr. Pembrook, I was undermining my own medication with a salad topping for a year, and I had no idea." She's not alone. Most people have no idea what to do instead. If you love the texture pine nuts add to a dish, try slivered almonds or chopped walnuts. They give you the crunch, the richness, and the healthy fats without the drug interference, the taste distortion, or the oxidation risk. If you absolutely must eat pine nuts, talk to your pharmacist first. Ask specifically whether they interact with any of your current prescriptions, and store them in the freezer, never on the counter. Never in a warm pantry. If they taste off, throw them away immediately. That slightly stale flavor isn't age, it's rancidity. And rancidity is inflammation in disguise. The pine nut isn't a superfood. For seniors on daily medication, it's a silent disruptor, elegant, invisible, and hiding in the last place you'd ever think to look. So let's go back to where we started. I told you that some of the nuts you trust most might be silently working against your health. And now you know exactly which ones and why. Almonds protect your bones by putting calcium where it belongs. Walnuts fuel your brain with the omega-3s it's been starving for. Pistachios lower your blood pressure and shield your eyes from the damage you can't reverse. And one single Brazil nut per day keeps your thyroid calibrated, your inflammation low, and your energy steady. 4 nuts, 4 allies, each one doing something specific that your body over 60 desperately needs. On the other side, peanuts flood your system with omega-6 and aflatoxin risk your liver can no longer afford. Cashews spike your blood sugar and build stones in kidneys that are already filtering slower than they used to. And pine nuts, the most dangerous of all, quietly interfere with the medications you depend on every single day. 3 nuts. 3 risks, each one hiding behind a reputation that makes you trust them without question. Let me be clear about something. This is not about perfection. You don't have to throw away every peanut in your pantry tonight. You don't have to memorize a chart. You just need to know the difference, so the next time you reach into that bag, you're making a choice instead of a guess. That's what today was about. Not fear, not restriction, just clarity. I've seen patients in their 70s and 80s make one single swap almonds instead of peanuts, walnuts instead of cashews, and watch their inflammation markers drop, their energy return, and their medications start working the way they were always supposed to. Not because of some miracle, because they finally understood what was helping and what was hurting, and they reached for a different jar. You have that power right now. Not next month. Not after your next doctor's visit. Right now. The next handful you eat can be the first one that's truly working for you instead of against you. These are your golden years. You've earned them. You raised families. You built careers. You showed up every single day for the people who needed you. Now it's time to show up for yourself, starting with something as simple as which nut you keep on your kitchen counter. Your body isn't asking for a revolution. It's asking for a better handful. Leave a comment below with the name of the nut you're adding to your grocery list this week and the one you're removing. That one comment might be the reason someone else finally makes the switch. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Dr. Walter Pembrook and tap that notification bell. Every week, I break down the health truths older Americans deserve to hear. No jargon, no scare tactics, just straight talk from a doctor who treats you like family. I'm Dr. Walter Pembrook. Eat smart, stay sharp, and I'll see you in the next one.